Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Friday, September 25th. This is episode 29. Just myself and Chuck Mikatinik today, which is more than enough.
Let's see if that's the case, Matthew. We got a long way to go here.
I mean, we got one winner, one loser today. So coming off of I'll get into the Bronco game later. I have a lot of things to say.
Okay.
We start today as we normally do, episode 29, which means number 29. Who is it?
Well, Eric Dickerson comes to mind right up off the top.
He's number one.
Satchel Paige was a good one, too. I did not know that Satchel wore number 29.
Check for the name I haven't heard.
Okay, there you go. Satchel Paige was a guy that was an old Negro League player that also played to a very old age, also finally made it into the big leagues when the color barrier was broken. But what a phenomenal soundbite. Maybe one of the top 10 sports soundbites of all time, Satchel Paige. If you look up Satchel Paige's quotes, they're
good soundbite.
Like, everybody talks about Yogi Berra back in the day, but Satchel Paige was elite when it came to spitting out wisdom.
Bob Gambert, he said Hanford Dixon.
Hanford Dixon.
I've
heard of Hanford Dixon. I just can't place him. If you tell me where you heard of Hanford Dixon.
That was just the name he sent me. I don't know.
We'll get cards and letters.
I'm sure Bob can just, expand upon that when we ask him. He's a happy Browns fan today anyway. So the other names I came up with, Eric Berry, chief safety.
Yep, he sure was.
I had another one that is somehow escaping me now, but that was the only other really prominent one. Dickerson obviously is 21.05 in a season and one of the best running backs of all time. So I feel like
Sealy, Texas guy too.
I feel like every time we go through the 20s, it's just like, oh, there's a running back. Oh, there's another running back. Oh, there's another running back. So now that we're into the 30s, actually no, TD's going to come up for 30. So
George Odom, our good buddy playing for the 49ers. I think of when I hear 30, see 30, I think of George.
Okay, see, that's a good thing. We got a lot of different names. So. Lots to go into today. UTSA got their butts kicked. Longhorns did the butt kicking, not in that game, but obviously against Baylor. Going to talk a little bit of baseball today, too. Rangers, they swept the Mariners, and the Astros got swept by the Royals. So a big old flipperoo in the AL West. Lots to talk about there, but obviously the main event, the Dallas Cowboys. They lost 28-16 to the Cardinals as 12.5-point favorites. They had a lot of injuries up front. But the red zone sucked. The penalties sucked. Dak wasn't very good. The defense can't stop the run. Do you think it was more of a sign of things to come or just a bad day?
I think it was just a bad day. I mean, when you lose 3 offensive linemen and literally late in the week, that's a lot to overcome. We can start with that. But there was some of this, too, where, the old adage in the NFL, Matthew, is – the most desperate team, always put your money on that one. The Cardinals don't want to go down 0-3. They're at home, packed house. Hard to know if there were more Cowboy fans than Cardinal fans in the crib yesterday based on the amount of cheering that was going on for both sides.
It's a Cowboys-heavy town.
Indeed it is. It was way back in the 70s
like most towns are.
60s. Yeah, but the Cowboys used to have their flagship radio shows and games broadcast over the radio in Arizona.
Yeah.
A long, long time ago. So they cultivated their fan base very well, even back in the day. But without going into too much of a history lesson, I was just disappointed that it really felt like to me that the Cardinals came out and punched them in the face. And it took a while for the Cowboys to kind of get their footing in this game. And then I thought, okay, well, once they do, they're going to come back and win this game. But then I felt like the Cardinals kind of punched them in the face again in the fourth quarter. So there was a level of energy that the Cardinals played with yesterday that was palpable. And obviously, I don't think they're very talented, but boy, they sure had a nice scheme yesterday. I think they took advantage of the Cowboys in some spots, but give credit where credit's due. I mean, they were the better team clearly yesterday.
I'll tell you why I think it's a sign of things to come. And here's why. It seemed like the Cowboys reverted back to who they were. Yes, or last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. The red zone troubles, 1 touchdown out of 5 attempts, 3 field goals. Cool. The kicker can make field goals, but that's not what you need, and that's not how you win games. The defense can't stop the run. That's exactly what happened last year. The Eagles ran all over them with a second-string quarterback on Christmas Eve. They almost won that game, but the Cowboys beat the Eagles because they were starting Gardner Minshew and scored 40 points. You can't have these issues. And the penalty issue I thought was solved. This penalty issue, they had 13 penalties yesterday, accepted penalties. They should have had more. I saw too many things that they were doing previously. And I'm on the record as to saying I think the Cowboys are the best team in the league. And I'm drinking the Cowboys Kool-Aid. But they showed me all the things that have gotten them in trouble in the past 2 years in one game. And it was just like I was having deja vu.
Well, there were two offensive linemen that were making their first career starts. Never an easy thing to do. Continuity-wise, they looked a little disheveled, as you would think they would be, with three offensive linemen that are in there that weren't in there practicing all week. So you're right. The penalties and the interceptions were a problem last year. Will that be a problem going forward? I don't think so. I mean, it was just one interception. It was a terrible interception, obviously.
What was he looking at?
Yeah, obviously not at the guy that was kind of floating in the middle of the field.
There was a guy on either side of him. He was trying to wedge it in there, and then there was a guy literally right in front of him. Like, how do you miss him?
I don't know. And, there were a lot of things in that game where you're kind of scratching your head. To me, the biggest head scratcher in that game was Mike McCarthy deciding to go for it on 4th and goal in the third quarter when you're only down 8 points. I mean, that's still technically a 2-possession game. I mean, you got to have 2 plays to even up the score. Just kick the field goal right there, get it to 5, and then that puts the Cardinals at least a little bit in the back of their mind that, hey, now the margin for error is gone. The lead's now 1 touchdown. I don't know. That was kind of odd. I just don't think that this is something that you need to worry about long term. We'll find out. That's the beauty of this league. They're not as good as maybe we thought they were through 2 weeks, but they're not as bad as they were yesterday through 3 weeks.
I mean, I'm trying not to overreact too much to the Cowboys' loss because there very well could be one game and they're coming back against the Patriots. But the thing is, their biggest weakness this year, and apparently this year, is their rushing defense. And that was their issue last year, besides the turnovers that they had. They're playing the Patriots next, who just want to run the ball right up your butt. And then they play the Niners. And you think that Christian McCaffrey isn't going to run the ball right up their butt? And Elijah Mitchell, and then they're going to have Brandon Ayuk over the top. The other problem is that even when they're running the ball and getting the ball ran on the defense, Josh Dobbs was 14 of 17 when the Cowboys were in man coverage yesterday. So,
sorry about that.
Chuck's unplugging his microphone or his headphones. There we go.
Just got a jolt of energy. That's what I needed.
Josh Dobbs was 14 of 17 when the Cowboys were in man coverage yesterday. That's not a problem that's going away. Josh Dobbs carved them up.
Yeah, hats off to Josh Dobbs. I mean, this is a guy that got to them late, too. I mean, there were a lot of things that you truly didn't think that you would see yesterday. I blame Jerry Jones for having Chris Christie in the booth, in the suite.
You see all the jokes yesterday since Taylor Swift was in the suite.
Yes.
He was like, who's Chris Christie dating?
Nice work, Internet.
The Internet remains undefeated.
Right.
What did you think of what McCarthy said afterwards? One, he said a couple of interesting things, but the one that a lot of people are reacting to is that he told the players before the game that the officiating crew was an issue, to put it lightly. What do you think about him warning them before the game about the officiating crew and then them coming out and having 13 penalties?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a hard one to wrestle with because every coach, every team gets the pregame report. What's the history on the crew that they're having to deal with? And I think it's one of those things, if you don't address it, then, maybe guys that are used to getting away with a little tug here and a little hold there, maybe they don't address what it is that this crew has historically been calling. So, I don't know. I mean, that's one of those you're darned if you do, darned if you don't kind of things for McCarthy. I don't really read too much into it.
And then the other thing coming from the comments after the game was Dak once again being snippy. I'll just say it as like when it comes to his picks and his turnovers, he's getting testy with the reporters and the media.
I heard what he said when he said it, and I didn't read too much into it. I mean, sometimes these guys try to galvanize the locker room. It's us against the world. Look, they're waiting for us to fail. And then use that as fuel the following week. There's a tendency with all of us in every sport to try to write the history of the league, right? As Jason Garrett used to say, the Monday after the Sunday slate of games. And the long and short of it is this is a marathon that you sprint. This is 17 weeks with a bye. And the team that the Cowboys had on the field yesterday, there's a good chance it's going to look a lot different towards the end of the season, just based on injuries and trades and everything else, but mostly injuries. So there's a long way to go. I think DeMarcus Lawrence said it best when he said, this was a wake-up call. You know, maybe they were feeling themselves a little bit. How could they not? They went into 2 NFL games and literally blew the other team off the field both times. So, you know, maybe this is something that they needed early on in the season. Like, if we don't bring it every single game, and I think if you're asking me about energy level, or bring it up again, I mean, the Cardinals look like they took the fight to them.
Micah said it a little bit after the game. He said, we can't play down to our competition. So I was listening to something this morning. I can't remember who said it. That was kind of a slight to, not a slight to the Cardinals. Well, actually, it is a slight to the Cardinals. I mean, you're basically saying we can't play like these crappy teams. And every NFL team is an NFL team. They have talented guys. They have talented players. Maybe not the Broncos, but everyone else has talented players and talented rosters that can lose and beat you in any given Sunday. So, like, saying we can't play down to that competition, well, the Cardinals just proved that they played up to their competition then and kicked your ass. So, like, that's kind of a disrespectful thing to say when you're talking about your colleagues, I guess, in the NFL.
Well, I mean, that's part of probably going back to them feeling themselves a little bit too much. But, you know, you talked about trends, and I don't know if the penalty thing is going to rear its head the rest of the year like it did yesterday. I don't know if Dak's going to continue to turn the ball over. He had the one egregious one late in the game, obviously, that you can't have any of those, even in the first quarter. But I think the biggest concern for me is the trend that hasn't fixed itself is the red zone offense. I mean, that has been a problem, and it just doesn't look like there's ever anybody open. So what are they going to do to fix that? I mean, these attempts at back shoulder, one-on-one, fade balls in the end zone, I mean, that doesn't work anymore, or very rarely does it. I mean, it's almost like you're hoping for a pass interference call so that you can get a short popper. I don't know. That's something that I think if we're going to make light of, that is a concern 3 weeks in, and based on what they didn't do last year, I think that's it.
That's the number one concern on the offense, absolutely. I mean, for me, on the offense, there's 2 major concerns. One, their offensive line depth is not good. Like, 2 guys making their first NFL start, like, okay, like, I get it. They need those reps and all that stuff. But if you don't have Zach Martin, that's a problem. If you don't have your starting center, that's a huge problem. And not having those 2 really showed up in every phase of the offensive game. The second thing is the red zone offense, like you mentioned. And they haven't been good in any game this season in the red zone. They were 1 for 5 this week. I don't remember what they were against the Jets, but I know they kicked a lot of field goals against the Jets, and they didn't have to score against the Giants because they just trashed them from the very start. So there's a lot of things that need to be corrected on the offense, and Mike McCarthy and Dak haven't given me really any confidence to say that they're going to fix it.
Well, I mean, you are what you are through 3 games, so I mean, I think that's an area of concern. But again, some of this is, you're going to slowly build as you go through the season, right? You wouldn't expect Dak and McCarthy, with all of the changes that were made during the offseason, to be clicking on all cylinders. I mean, I think that was the hope, but the reality is every team in this league is pretty darn good at playing football. I mean, look at the Texans. Looked like trash the first 2 weeks. They looked like world beaters yesterday. Go in on the road and dominate in all 3 phases. Talk about what the Cardinals did yesterday. I mean, this is a slow build, and luckily they have the benefit of future weeks to try to get some of this stuff sorted out.
It's the NFL, and anybody can win on any given Sunday. 3 teams yesterday won as touchdown or more dogs for the first time since 2018. Wow. So the Cardinals, the Colts, and the Texans all won as touchdown plus underdogs, and they all won outright. And that was the first time that's happened since 2018. So anything can happen. But I think what yesterday showed me, and I would like to make it very clear, that I believe in the Cowboys. I believe they're a good team. I believe they have they have a top 5 defense. I think they have a top 10 offense, and I think Dak has played okay to this point. However, I think that yesterday showed me something that I didn't want to believe, but I now do, that the defense cannot have a bad day because this offense is not good enough to hold them up.
Well, I think that's going to be a week-to-week thing. I mean, again, I don't think we would have thought in our wildest dreams, even with Trayvon Diggs, who we haven't even talked about going out.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that next.
So, do we see the Cardinals running for 200-plus yards on the ground in this game? Not in my wildest dreams. And then, we talked about what Dobbs did. Again, tip of your cap. I mean, these guys get paid too, and the fact that they got their act together as quickly as they did in a game they absolutely had to have, or, you don't even want to be looking at the base of Mount Everest like that, thinking you're 0-3, now what?
Yeah, I mean, every NFL team, every NFL player has pride, and they have dignity, and they want to be respected, and they're going to go out and they're going to try their hardest, unless you're the Broncos against the Dolphins. And so that can happen. And Josh Dobbs, hats off to him. He played fantastic. He was hitting open receivers. That 44-yard run he started the game off with, and then the ball that was like across the field on the other side was fantastic. Like, he played really well yesterday, and he obviously played well enough to win. How big of a difference do you think Diggs not being there was?
Well, it's hard to really quantify that, I guess. I mean, what I thought was fascinating, again, was this is the second time this year that I looked up on the field on defense, and I'm like, 2? Who is that? Oh, wait, that's Jordan Lewis. He switched his numbers.
Right.
And, he looked a little not himself. I thought 1 looked like he was, out of sorts on some plays. There were guys that were out of position. There were continuity issues, which you would expect, I think, when a key member of your defense goes out. I mean, you got 7 on the field. You don't have to worry about a whole heck of a lot at that spot.
Yeah.
And so, just little things like, Gilmore, as good as he is, I mean, on that touchdown, he looked like he was confused at the line of scrimmage and got a slow start covering his guy, and then he was late getting over to the receiver after Dobbs dropped that dime for the touchdown. I mean, there were little things where they just didn't look sharp, and I think some of this was their chests were puffed out probably a little bit too much. And, yeah, we lost a really talented player. We lost a Pro Bowler. But we're still the Cowboys. We got a ton of good DBs, and they do. But continuity-wise, just weren't at their best, especially in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, Trayvon Diggs isn't coming up and being in the box and to try and stop the run. I mean, he's not a defensive tackle. Stopping the run isn't his deal. So I don't think him not being there prevented them from stopping Josh Dobbs or Rondale Moore or James Conner from running for 200-plus yards. That wasn't Trayvon Diggs' fault. I mean, maybe the 14 of 17 on man coverage was a little bit of a diminishing or a little bit of a detriment, but I don't think his presence. Maybe it was more of his presence and not him as a player, because I think him as a player, I don't know if they missed that, but I think they missed his presence and like just him being there.
Well, there's some other things you can do, obviously, when he's on the field that
Right.
maybe you can't do when he's not on the field. But I think you're right. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, his presence, I mean, he's a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw all the stuff he was doing during training camp to try to irritate the Cowboys offense. And I think some of that bleeds over to some of the other guys that maybe aren't like that. If it's just J-Ron Curse, if it's just, I don't see 11 being a guy that's, necessarily barking at other guys to get to where they need to go or lighting fires, like maybe DeMarcus Lawrence is. But, I think that's probably some of what they lost yesterday. I mean, you got to have a sense of pride, but when you give up a big play, I mean, there's got to be somebody in the huddle going, hey, what's going on? How do we just get gashed by these guys?
Right. I mean,
do your job.
Overall, I'm not breaking any new ground here. It was a poor performance, and they know that. I think everybody knows that, and there's going to be a lot of overreactions today. I'm trying not to overreact too much, but I think that it showed us a lot of things that they need to work on. And over the next 14 games, if stuff doesn't get fixed, they're not going to last very long in the playoffs.
Right. That's true. But it's also one of those things where, if you have a game like this, you might be able to stack 3 games in a row, and then this might come up again. I mean, it's tough to win every single week in the NFL, and I think Dak said it best. There's been one in the history of the league. So there you go.
I wouldn't be surprised if they came out and trashed the Patriots this week. But that game, they got 2 tough games right after that. They play in San Francisco, and then I believe they're in LA against the Chargers, and that's the Kellen Moore revenge game. I know that Kellen is going to want to put up 50 against the Cowboys. So both of those games are going to show who the Cowboys really are.
Yeah, but it seems like every week is a tough game. You would think, the Patriots are having their own problems on offense, obviously. So we'll see. That should be a game that you would think on paper that the Cowboys should be able to get, and we'll see what happens.
Well, that's all we're going to do for the Cowboys. I'm not going to mention it anymore. I'm going to spend 2 minutes really quick on the Broncos. Since the Broncos won the championship in 2015, they've been horrible. And I don't waver in fandom. I don't ever look at the game and look at the season and be like, I wish I wasn't a Broncos fan. Like, even when we lost 43-6 in the Super Bowl, I was like, okay, like, it was a bad game. That's fine. I've never been more embarrassed to be a fan of a team than I was yesterday. 70-20, and the team completely quit throughout the second half. You saw them quit in the first half. Like, I've never questioned being a fan more than I was yesterday. And the team, like, heads need to roll. The embarrassment that the Broncos have been over the last 7-8 years has made it probably is having Pat Bowlen roll over in his grave. Like, Pat Bowlen was one of the greatest owners in the history of the NFL, and since he died, this team has been hot garbage. And they need to do something, because they're going to start losing a lot of fans. They're going to start losing a lot of cachet. They're going to start losing a lot of prestige that they've built up over the last 60 years. They are a lost organization, and Sean Payton needs to right the ship. And for all the people blaming Russ doesn't play defense, okay? Russ doesn't chase Devon A-Chain down and stop him from running for 208 yards. Like, stop blaming Russ for the defense sucking. The defense is lost for 3 games, basically. So I've been holding on to hope that the Broncos are not going to be crappy. But here we are, crappy again, and having the most embarrassing loss for a prestigious organization in the history of mankind.
Dude, I think you need a hug.
It was a long. Well, the good at the end of the day yesterday, I was actually hoping that they kicked the field goal and scored the field goal and they scored 73 points. I was just hoping for it, because at that point I was just like, at least we lost it with with gusto.
Right.
At least it was historic,
That's right. It's always tough, I see a lot of Bears fans going through the same thing, and I guess I always revert to this because I don't mind. I don't know if switching the allegiances, because I'm not necessarily at my age chasing logos per se anymore. It's, who's been nice to you, who's nice to talk to, who do you respect as a human, as a player, what do you appreciate about them? And sometimes those guys end up playing for, teams that I hated as a kid. So it's interesting especially like I see with Bear fans, like I said, going through the same thing. It's what has this team ever done for you to have to invest this kind of energy in it?
Yeah.
So I don't think you have to worry about anybody calling you a name if you go, you know what, I'm just not watching them anymore. There's no reason that I should be wasting my time. If this is the best you can do, then I got to be doing something else.
The thing
or
is,
getting on another team's bandwagon.
When someone used to ask me, like, what team do you root for? Oh, I root for the Broncos. And I used to say that, like, with pride. I, like, say it sheepishly now, like, I root for Denver. Sorry. Like, I just don't even want to say it anymore. I just want to say, like, I don't root for anybody. Like, don't ask me who I root for, because I'm just embarrassed to be a fan at this point. They're so bad all the time. How have the Lions fans done this for so long? How have the Browns fans done this for so long? I can't do this.
Right. I get it. I mean, it's just fascinating, though. Like, get somebody come up to you that really hates the Cowboys, and it's like, go, if you had the opportunity, and I know you have you met a bad guy in the locker room yet? I mean, even if they're having a bad day, they're respectful. They know you're coming at them with all kinds of meathead questions. And I don't know. I mean, so for me, it's hard to hate them per se, and then to see how the organization treats everybody too. I mean, I think those are good things. And again, it's the story about DeMarvion Overshown being at Roadhouse, before the season started, and the two Oiler fans, they didn't want to get their picture taken with him because they hated the Cowboys. It's like, well, just go meet the kid. There's no way you're going to hate him and the team he plays for after you meet him, to see how congenial he is and how friendly he is. It's, at that point, it's who sees a star on a helmet. At that point, you just see a real human. I'd rather see that and show somebody an example of that. And then, maybe it'll take the edge off putting too much energy into a Sunday afternoon where your team gets their ass kicked by 50
Well,
points.
that doesn't help me that I know everyone's a good person in the locker room, Chuck. Okay? I know that
I'm telling you need a hug, bro.
I know that not a lot of them are jerks, but they need to be more like jerks on the field, I guess, because they suck. Just needed to get that off my chest. But speaking of the Bears, how bad did the Bears have to be home underdogs to the Broncos this weekend?
Wow. That's impressive.
They're 3.5-point underdogs at home this weekend to a team that just let 70 points be scored on them. How horrible do you have to be underdogs at home to that team? Pretty bad.
Yeah, that seems like something ain't right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like,
them Vegas boys don't miss very often, though, do they?
Them Vegas boys are like, who else? Like, what?
This is gonna be the only time they're favored all year.
What other team would the Broncos be favored against? I think if they played the Cardinals, they wouldn't be. Like,
no,
I don't.
Not after the tongue lashing or the lashing that they got.
Oh my God, the Bears are so bad. Anyway, I just had to get that off my chest. It wasn't on the rundown, but
that's okay. You're here for open mic night.
It's a safe space.
That's right.
Let's get to UTSA real quick. There's not too much credence we have to pay into this game. They lost 45-14. ELM did not look very good in the first half. McCown's kid came in and played really well. I think it has something to do with him being left-handed as well. Kind of, Frank's left-handed, he's left-handed, kind of same sort of thing on the offense.
Good point.
But no Frank Harris, no Trey Moore, no JT Clark. They're gearing up for a run in this conference play. What's your outlook on the team now as opposed to the outlook 4 weeks ago?
Injuries, and now it comes down to, I think, in some respects, to managing the season. Honestly, these first few games don't really mean a whole heck of a lot in the grand scheme of things. Everything is right in front of this football team still. So, if JT Clark is a maybe, wouldn't you be better served giving him 2 more weeks off and then unleash the fury once you get to Temple and you start league play? I mean, it comes down to that. I mean, I know they were thinking, there were visions of grandeur. I won't name the player. One of them thought that they were going to run the table and that Tennessee was the only game they were worried about because, again, you get Frank's banged up and then you go through the litany of dudes that are out. And I'm talking dudes. You have no Trey Moore last week. You don't think that was a reason why Tennessee was able to do what it did on defense? I mean, you're talking about NFL caliber players, JT included, that haven't sniffed the field either all season long or in the last, 6 quarters. All of a sudden, you can get a game that can get away from you like this. I just think, at some point, the Tennessee game, the meaning of it changed for the UTSA football organization, where we've got to be ready to go when conference play comes, because that's where your season lies now.
Yeah, as soon as Frank went down at Texas State, I think that the Army and the Tennessee game then became tune-ups. As soon as the injury bugs started hitting them again, they for sure wanted to come out and beat Houston. Once they lost that game, they come out against Texas State, who just comes off that win against Baylor, and then you're trying to beat Texas State. But as soon as the injury bug hits them, they're like, okay, we need to get ready for conference play. So this Tennessee game churned from maybe we can beat an SEC opponent to, okay, let's take the $1.6 million that they're paying us to play this game and let's make it through healthy and get to the next one. So I think you're right. It took a different meaning after the first 3 games were played.
Yeah, and let's see, because I think they've now, again, having the week off before they start league play, and you're talking about, JT told us during the summer he was ready to go week 1. So they're being really cautious with him, and there's bigger fish for JT to fry at the end of this season. So, I think the thing that he has to be concerned about, and I think they're concerned about it for him, is that when you play, you have to be 100% because every move you make is going to either cost you money or make you money from here until the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, UTSA, obviously, they're not happy with the way that the season's gone so far, but a lot of it's not their doing. I mean, when you lose your starting right tackle, you lose your starting receiver, you lose your all-conference, all-everything outside linebacker or defensive end, depending on whatever scheme they're playing. You lose Frank Harris, who's Mr. San Antonio pretty much. It's just hard to win those games, and it's hard to make those games meaningful. And, I mean, now that they have this week off, they need everyone to get healthy. They're going to go full bore at Temple in 2 weeks. So.
I'm 100% with you. And I think it's just, it's fascinating how things turn, right? Should have won the U of H game. They dominated the stat sheet. And they've won their fair share of games where they necessarily didn't win the stat sheet but won the game. But to me, it was the Army game where it was, you can't get pushed around in your own house by those guys like they did. And, again, I think at that point you have to reassess everything. It's, we were in a tussle with Texas State, no autopsy, no foul there. I mean, obviously they've gone on and they're starting to churn it up too there. I mean, GJ's doing a great job there. It's just fascinating, though, how literally week to week, at some point you have to have a 40,000-foot view and say, all right, here's what we're doing, come hell or high water, be it good, be it bad, but again, we've got to be ready for when the real bullets start flying.
Yeah, I mean, and if they can stay healthy now, I won't be surprised if they end 9-3 and they run the table in conference play. The conference isn't easy, though. They're going to have some tough games. And even the game against Temple, Temple's going to give them everything they got. Let's get to the Longhorns real quick before we get to some baseball. So Longhorns come out, they kicked Baylor's ass, man. They destroyed them in every sense of the word. They didn't belong on the same field together, and that's the kind of thing that I think I'm most impressed with the Longhorns is that you and I talked about it for weeks that they're going to get their best shot from every single Big 12 school. They took Baylor's best shot and they shoved it right back in their face.
They really did. I mean, that's impressive because we did embrace the hate. We're going to be able to do that each and every week, but Steve Sarkisian said some interesting things, I thought, after the game when he said, we came in here, we did what we needed to do, but there was no celebrating really after the game, and he had to stop and remind his team, it's okay, you can celebrate. I mean, these wins are hard. League games are hard, even harder on the road. I don't care who you're playing. And, they got a big one coming up. I mean, there's only one other Big 12 team that's ranked. It's Kansas. Texas, when they've stubbed their toe.
Oklahoma, too.
Right. But, I mean, this one coming up Saturday against Kansas, I mean, that ain't going to be easy either based on what Kansas has done here recently against Texas.
Well, do you think that Kansas game, though, could be like a kind of a trap game because you have Oklahoma next week? I mean, it's kind of like a ranked matchup this week, but Kansas is 24 and Texas is 3. It's one of those high-ranked, low-ranked ones. But then you have Oklahoma next week, and Oklahoma looks damn good.
Well, I think anybody that was on a Texas team that had lost to Kansas that's there, that knows what that game could turn out to be, those players will have no problem getting up for it. Maybe some of the new guys. But again, this is part of what you find out about your football team each and every week, right? Can you take care of business and not look ahead? And easier said than done, I think, with colleges because they're young and they're impressionable, and it's human nature to look past a Kansas. But, I mean, all you have to do is look at the top 25 and see, there's only 2 teams in the top 25 that are in the Big 12. It's us and them. How the hell do you not get up for that? How do you not respect the fact that Kansas is coming in undefeated?
Yeah, I mean, when you have a ranked matchup anytime, you have to get up for it. But I think that's what they've kind of proved to me so far is that no matter what the ranked matchup is, no matter what game it is, they're going to come in and they're not going to play with their food. They're going to punch you in the mouth and they're going to try and win that game.
Well said.
And that's one thing that Texas has proven to me so far this year. And maybe they haven't done that in years past. It's something that we've all kind of questioned. We've never questioned the talent that Texas has. But we've questioned the want to. We've questioned, will they get up for every single game? And they've proven this year that they're going to get up for the game. They're going to give their best, and their best is better than probably 99.9% of the other teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they're showing right now as we sit here today, without having the benefit of knowing the outcome of Saturday, is they just seem like they've got more dogs than they've had in recent memory.
Like Sark seems like this is finally his guys, and those are the guys that he wanted. Those are the guys he wants to go to war with, and they're going to war for him and with him every single week. Let's get to the AL West real quick. So Rangers sweep the Mariners in convincing fashion, and then the Astros get swept by the Royals, which makes my wife happy, but it does not make anyone in Houston happy. Now the Rangers are up 2.5 games on the Stros. They're up 3 games on the Mariners. 7 games to play, 6 games to play, depending on which team you're looking at. The Astros, I think, have 6. The Rangers have 7. The Mariners have 7. Can the Rangers hold that out?
Matt, what I find fascinating about all this is literally I have friends that are Ranger fans and I have friends that are Astros fans, and I'm partial to both. I like both teams. There's no reason for me to hate either team. But within the last month, I've had my Ranger fans come up to me, oh, it's a lost season. I can't believe we've won it. And it's over. And, just last week, or 10 days ago, it was the same thing with the Astros fans. Like, I don't even think we're going to make the playoffs this year. It's like, you don't know. I mean, that's the beauty of playing 162 and how quickly the fortunes of your team can change. The Rangers are trottling and like, what's the word? I don't even think there's such a word as trottling. I think it just made something up.
Treading the line.
That they're like swimming in quicksand. They can't do anything. Their pitching is awful. The bullpen's terrible. Yes, we'll have to look that one up. And then let me know if you find something. And, they're not hitting worth a damn. And then, Josh comes back. But they go into Toronto, another team that's now currently in the playoff mix, and they beat the crap out of those guys 3 straight games. And all of a sudden, everything flips. I went to the Rangers game on Friday night, and, Seattle, they got a bunch of dogs, too. I mean, they just keep coming at you. In fact, if Josh doesn't make a diving play at third base, that game gets really, really crazy. Bases loaded, 8-5 game, 2 outs. Guy hits a missile in the 5-hole. Josh lays out, gets up, throws the guy out. But that's a base hit. That's 2-run score. And all of a sudden, it's game back on again. I guess what I'm trying to say, it's almost like the way we look at the NFL, right? You can't write the history of anything, even on a Monday when we got 7 games left to go. I mean, this is going to be a great week. The Mariners have still, even though they're the team that's the odd team out right now, only a half game, all their games left are with the Rangers and the Astros. So, I mean, how big are their games going to be the rest of the week? How cool is it going to be a Mariner fan all week watching this play out and then having, just to see what the Rangers are going to do? I mean, are they going to stub their toe at Anaheim with a team that has nothing to lose? I mean, I wouldn't want to play the Royals right now. They've been playing pretty damn good baseball the last 3 weeks. So it's oftentimes when you get through this schedule, it's when are you playing teams and how are they playing at the time?
Well, the schedule makers for baseball and for the AL West are just had to have been licking their chops and patting themselves on the back when this is the last 10 games that the Rangers had. They had 3 against the Mariners, then 3 against the Angels, then 4 against the Mariners. And you look at the Mariners schedule, they had 3 against the Rangers, 3 against the Stros, and 4 against the Rangers. Like, how does that happen? Like, whoever made that schedule, give them a raise. Like, that's phenomenal.
It's just so cool, though. This is what I was hoping for all year, is that you would have a very competitive baseball season where the Rangers added a bunch of pieces, bunch of arms. Seems like most of them are hurt. But, you overcome all that, and yet here they are. That's not even speaking to what the Astros have gone through this year. By all accounts, if you look at the litany of guys that have missed time this year, they shouldn't even be in this hunt, but yet they are. And so here we are. We've had this race through the whole season, coming down to the last week. 3 teams duking it out, 4 teams duking it out for 3 spots.
So
love it.
Out of the 3 of them, who do you, just with all things being equal, who do you think is actually the best team out of the 3 of them?
That's a really tough one because, to me, you wouldn't want to have to face, if it was me, the Mariners starting pitching, but yet the Rangers just trashed them other than the Saturday game. So, I mean, Bryce Miller, the kid from New Braunfels, is having a hell of a year. And they, man, I mean, that kid they just called up, the Rangers, that Evan, whatever his name is, or I can't think, he's a left fielder. They just called him up. The guy hits a ball that looks like a base hit when it leaves the bat, and the kid hits it 390 over the corner of the wall. It was like, you got to be kidding me. How does this little skinny dude, hit a ball that far that looked like that? But they're getting juice at the right time. And, so I wouldn't want to face the Mariners starting pitching. I wouldn't want to face the Ranger bats the way they're swinging it right now. The Astros, there's something about championship DNA, right, 100%. And then the Blue Jays, they seem to be hitting their stride right at the right time, too. Their bullpen's pretty good. Are they going to get enough offense? I think, there's just maybe one too many holes in that lineup I think you can kind of pitch around. But each team has something that could really, if they get hot, they could go take it all the way.
I told you guys at the All-Star break that I thought that the Rangers needed a couple more games on the Astros to not get caught. I wasn't even thinking about Seattle because Seattle was like 10 games back at that point. I still think the Astros are the best team. They have the pitching, they have the hitting, they have the pedigree. Maybe they don't show it all the time, but I feel like if they get into the playoffs, they have, the chutzpah. They have what it takes because they've shown us that they have what it takes.
They have the mojo.
They have the mojo. It's going to be fascinating, and it's funny for us because, obviously Houston close to us, so we not root for them, but we're invested in them. The Rangers close to us, and we're invested in them. And then Bryce Miller is with Seattle, so we kind of rooting for the Mariners because of Bryce, and we're rooting for him unequivocally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a closet Blue Jay fan, and I'm thinking, gosh, man, the one year that I would find myself not necessarily pulling for them is the year that they're really doing a nice job cementing that 2 spot. And then
so you're really
we're not
torn.
even talking about and then we're not even talking about the Orioles and how good they are.
Jesus.
With Jordan Westberg, from New Braunfels, Bryce's high school teammate, playing for Baltimore. They're good. I mean, young, probably young and dumb enough to pull something like running the table in the playoffs or doing something crazy because their pitching is really good. Their bullpen is elite. And they got some young mashers and dudes that take extra bags and just, again, stuff that I like to watch, not fat cat teams like the Yankees that got all the contracts. It's dudes that are looking for contracts.
Right.
And all happen to be on the same team
just hungry.
at the same time. Yeah.
Hungry.
Good stuff.
That dude Adley Rutschman on the Orioles is the best catcher in baseball. He's so freaking good.
He's pretty dang good.
He's phenomenal. I believe, you got anything else, Chuck? Anything you want to get off your chest? Because I had a vent sesh earlier, so I just wanted to, I want to make sure.
I will say that it was nice to see the green and gold come away with a victory that they didn't necessarily earn, but they got, and I felt like it made up for one maybe last week where they probably, maybe could have gotten one in Atlanta. But hey, I'm happy that I didn't think that the Packers would be 2-1 with Jordan Love being their quarterback, and he's proven to be pretty sharp cookie with, a lot of
Not
young
good
receivers, and the stuff that Aaron Rodgers, everybody made excuses for him last year, and
well, the amount of people that were out for the Packers this weekend, Christian Watson hasn't even played yet. He's their best receiver. Aaron Jones out again this week. It's kind of insane that they came back and won that game with the limited weapons that Jordan has.
Yeah, and 23 was out too, arguably the best cover corner in the league. I don't know. It's just kind of cool seeing a team that, not necessarily revolving around one guy. It's a bunch of no-namers, and I think, it seems infinitely Green Bay to have a team like this as opposed to one that's got the Hollywood girlfriends.
Yeah, I think they did have
on all the commercials.
They got a little lucky this week because when Derek Carr went out, the game changed.
100%.
Derek Carr was carving up the defense, and when he went out, Jameis just couldn't really step in and do it.
Well, he let him on that drive to get him into field goal range and all that.
Yeah,
too,
they should have made. You guys got lucky on a lot of occasions there.
100%.
No, but 2-1 for a team that nobody believed in to start the season.
And
pretty damn good
in a division that's infinitely gettable.
Yeah, because we've talked about the Bears; they're horrible. The Vikings can't get out of their own way, and the Lions are good.
The Lions, they're going to fight you, and they do have some weapons. And salute to our guy, Josh Reynolds, who. I didn't see what he did yesterday, but he was their leading receiver in week 1. So, always pulling for the local guys all the time.
They're biting kneecaps over there. So, so that's all we got for you today. A heck of an entertaining weekend. I'll just say that. I didn't cry about the Bronco game, so that's good. I've only cried at one Bronco game ever, and that was the Super Bowl. But I think that's fair. when you lose 43-6 in the Super Bowl. This one just pissed me off.
Well, rightfully so.
Yeah, I think so. We'll be back on Wednesday with the High School Hype Squad to preview the Brennan and O'Connor matchup. Brennan on TNL once again, Coach Baser. So love to get to talk to Coach Baser and Coach Molesky.
Yes.
Two of the preeminent coaches in our area. So.
Yeah, I mean, O'Connor's pretty banged up, but you're going to be in a fist fight when you play the O'Connor Panthers. Well coached. They look clean. They look like their coach. They act like their coach. I mean,
disciplined and
100%.
Yeah, and I mean they definitely take the personality of their coach.
Baser,
we had him last year too,
right? And then Baser's got that team's growing up pretty quick. I mean, it was a pretty darn good performance against a darn good Taft team.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember, you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Please download, rate, review, subscribe, give us some feedback. I think it's going to be Zach and I on Wednesday. I haven't cemented that yet, but pretty sure it's going to be Zach and I on Wednesday for the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. We'll see you then.
All right.
Damn Broncos.
Yeah, I don't blame you.